Tonight, something far more dangerous than a battlefield skirmish is unfolding, something that reaches well beyond Kharkiv, Donetsk, or any trench dug along Ukraine's eastern front. For the first time in weeks, the shockwaves of this war have reached Washington itself, and this time it isn't just a familiar round of diplomatic tension. This time, Moscow has issued a direct, calculated, and highly specific threat to the United States. Not vague, not symbolic, not the usual political noise. A deliberate warning delivered publicly and triggered by a Ukrainian missile strike that, according to multiple intelligence agencies, obliterated a key Russian command complex. The strike was devastating on a military level, but it's the Kremlin's response that has rattled the global system, and in a move the U.S. rarely makes. Washington has responded not with missiles, but with words so sharp and so explicit that diplomats around the world are describing them as a line in the sand. This is not routine geopolitics anymore. Good evening. What we are witnessing right now is not simply a conflict inside Ukraine. It has evolved into a live confrontation between two nuclear superpowers, Russia and the United States, unfolding in real time on one of the most volatile geopolitical frontiers of the modern era. And it all started with a single, brilliantly executed strike. From a tactical perspective, the operation was flawless, but its aftermath is proving far more dangerous than the strike itself. Satellite imagery reviewed by Western analysts shows that Ukrainian forces hit a major Russian military installation deep inside Luhansk territory, well behind enemy lines. This wasn't a minor outpost. It was a fortified logistics hub, a central nerve point for drone coordination, artillery targeting, and electronic warfare operations. A site so strategically vital that taking it offline sends shockwaves across the entire front. And Ukraine didn't just damage it, they erased it. Ukrainian officials have avoided commenting on the weapons used, but U.S. defense insiders have confirmed to multiple outlets that the attack was carried out using American-supplied ATACMS, long-range, precision-guided tactical missiles built for exactly this kind of operation. Hardened targets, deep range penetration, maximum disruption, and the impact was unmistakable. Fireballs lighting up the night sky, smoke plumes visible from dozens of miles away. Civilians capturing the explosions on their phones from nearly 40 kilometers out. Even thermal sensors picked up the heat signature. Thermal imaging from satellites revealed something even more alarming: secondary explosions, the unmistakable signature of hidden ammunition depots going up in flames. Within minutes, Russian emergency teams rushed toward the smoking crater that had once been a command hub. But the destruction was beyond anything they had anticipated. Entire structures were flattened. Communication towers shattered. Mobile radar trucks reduced to twisted metal. And among the dead were several senior officers responsible for coordinating operations across the region. And then everything changed. Because within hours, not overnight, not the next day hours, the Kremlin issued a statement. And not a vague political remark. Not the usual carefully worded denial. No, this time Russia's deputy foreign minister appeared on national television, surrounded by top defense officials, broadcasting to every major state-run network. And in that moment, he did something Moscow has always tried to avoid publicly. He named the United States. Not Ukraine, not NATO, not the generic Western forces, the United States. His exact words: "This was not a Ukrainian strike. This was an American operation carried out with American weapons, American intelligence, and American coordination. We view it as a hostile act." And then came the line that sent shockwaves through foreign ministries worldwide: "If Washington continues to escalate, consequences will follow." This wasn't diplomatic language. This wasn't posturing. This was a threat, direct, pointed, unmistakable. Russian state media erupted instantly. High-profile TV anchors began using phrases like direct war, Washington's provocation, and red lines crossed. Telegram channels across Russia buzzed with rumors that retaliation wouldn't target Ukraine, but American interests abroad. And as if to make sure the world understood they were serious, Moscow took several very public military steps. First, it announced that long-range bomber aircraft had been placed on combat alert. Next, Two MiG-31 interceptor jets, reportedly armed with Kinzhal hypersonic missiles, were scrambled from central Russia toward the Western theater. Naval forces in both the Arctic and Black Sea went on heightened alert, but the most unsettling development came from beneath the surface of the ocean. Two Russian submarines left port with their transponders turned off. No signal, no tracking, no locating, on data. In other words, they disappeared. So why such an explosive reaction to a single Ukrainian strike? Because this wasn't about destroyed buildings. It wasn't about lost equipment. It was about exposure. The strike pierced a psychological shield the Kremlin has relied on for years, the illusion of invulnerability. For a country that projects power through intimidation, the realization that its deep-line infrastructure can be obliterated with American-guided precision is more than a tactical setback, it's a humiliation. And humiliation triggers aggression. But this time, the United States chose not to stay silent. And when Washington answered, it did so with unusual sharpness. A response came from the White House, only 3 sentences long, but powerful enough to echo across diplomatic cables around the world. The White House National Security Council released a statement short, direct, and unmistakably firm. It read, "The United States is committed to supporting Ukraine in defending its sovereignty. Russia's continued threats against the United States are unacceptable and dangerous. Any action taken against American assets, personnel, or interests will result in a decisive and overwhelming response." There it was again, that carefully chosen phrase. Decisive and overwhelming. Not measured, not proportional, not appropriate. Decisive, overwhelming, final. And almost immediately, the United States began to move its pieces across the global chessboard. A U.S. Navy destroyer, equipped with the Aegis missile defense system, sailed into the eastern Mediterranean. B-52 bombers flew highly visible patrol routes over Eastern Europe, flights meant to be noticed. Reconnaissance aircraft, including the RC-135 Rivet Joint and the P-8 Poseidon, intensified surveillance along NATO's eastern frontier. None of these were subtle gestures. They were deliberate signals. This wasn't bluffing, it was deterrence, displayed in full daylight. Meanwhile, diplomatic channels ignited. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo held urgent calls with his counterparts in Germany, France, and the United Kingdom. NATO ambassadors convened in Brussels for emergency briefings. Back-channel communication with Moscow was reactivated through the Swiss embassy, and then came the moment designed for global headlines. President Trump, maintaining his high-profile stance on the conflict, addressed reporters from the White House lawn. He spoke slowly, clearly, and without hesitation. "We will not allow threats to the United States to go unanswered. We stand by our allies. We will defend every inch of American interest." Behind those words lies a growing fear among military analysts. This war, already long, bloody, and unpredictable, may be evolving into something far more volatile, a phase where those who once operated at the edges of the conflict could be pulled into its center. And the path to escalation is frighteningly easy to imagine, because in modern warfare, the line between participation and support is paper thin. If the U.S. provides targeting intelligence to Ukraine, is that involvement? If the missile system is American, but the launch button is pressed by Ukrainian soldiers, who bears responsibility? And if Russia chooses to retaliate, not by invading, but through a cyber attack, a satellite disruption, or even a drone strike on a U.S. base overseas, what then? Is that an act of war? Do we respond with force? Do we escalate? This is the razor's edge the world is balanced on tonight. And while logic, diplomacy, and cooler minds may ultimately steer events away from disaster, history warns us that brinkmanship is perilous, especially when leaders are boxed in, pressured from within, or surrounded by military hardliners urging confrontation, especially when political survival depends on looking strong, even if the cost is stability. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin is facing a storm brewing within his own borders. The campaign in Ukraine has dragged on far longer than the Kremlin anticipated. Casualties are rising, sanctions are strangling the economy, and every time Ukraine executes another high-impact strike. Tonight, Something far more dangerous than a battlefield skirmish is unfolding, something that reaches well beyond Kharkiv, Donetsk, or any trench dug along Ukraine's eastern front. For the first time in weeks, the shockwaves of this war have reached Washington itself, and this time it isn't just a familiar round of diplomatic tension. This time, Moscow has issued a direct, calculated, and highly specific threat to the United States. Not vague, not symbolic, not the usual political noise. A deliberate warning delivered publicly and triggered by a Ukrainian missile strike that, according to multiple intelligence agencies, obliterated a key Russian command complex. The strike was devastating on a military level, but it's the Kremlin's response that has rattled the global system, and in a move the U.S. rarely makes. Washington has responded not with missiles, but with words so sharp and so explicit that diplomats around the world are describing them as a line in the sand. This is not routine geopolitics anymore. Good evening. What we are witnessing right now is not simply a conflict inside Ukraine. It has evolved into a live confrontation between two nuclear superpowers, Russia and the United States, unfolding in real time on one of the most volatile geopolitical frontiers of